Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining Topcon Solutions Store's webinar this morning, the AEC Collection Webinar Series, Exploring Architecture Software. Thank you so much for attending and being with us this morning. We have some great information to share with you. So before we officially get started with the presentation, I did want to go over a few housekeeping items. Time permitting, we will be having a Q&A at the very end of the presentation. So should you have any questions, please refer to your GoToWebinar control panel where you should have a questions pane. And please feel free to type in your questions and we'll make sure to answer them as we can. If we are unable to answer your questions today, we will definitely follow up with you after the presentation. My name is Diana Alarcon and I'm the Marketing Events Coordinator for Topcon Solutions. So just want to make sure that I introduce myself here. And I also wanted to direct you, should you want any information on Topcon Solutions, on upcoming webinars, or if you want to reference already recorded webinars that have happened, I would refer you to our website here, topconsolutions.com. And if you hover over the technical support tab here, you'll see videos. And this is a great place and a great resource in which you can go and reference all of our previously recorded webinars. I'd also like to direct you to our You're Invited tab. This is an additional source where you can find upcoming information on future webinars. As you know, this is a webinar series, so we will have the Exploring Infrastructure Software webinar on Tuesday, June 16th from 10 to 11. So if you're not signed up for that and you're interested, please make sure to go and register. We'd be happy to have you with us. Last but not least, for your knowledge, we do have a YouTube channel and we post all recorded webinars on this platform as well. So make sure to subscribe and turn your notification bell on so each time we have uploaded a new video, you'll know straight away. All right. So just a little bit about us, Topcon Solutions. We are the retail division to Topcon Positioning Systems, the world leader in construction layout, machine automation, and land surveying products. We are a Platinum Tier award-winning Autodesk partner and certified training center, and we are also a Platinum level Bluebeam partner as well. We do have 13 brick and mortar locations nationwide, crossing over 20 states, including Washington, D.C., and 13 and growing. So we hope to keep expanding and service you however we can. All right, our presenter for this morning is Curt Egli. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to him. 1 minute here.
And I'll show my screen.
All right.
Hopefully you're seeing it on the other end.
Yes, I am. Hi. Thank you, Curt.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Curt. I'm one of the technical specialists at Topcon Solutions, and I get the chance to show you a little bit of something else that's in the architectural set of software that comes with the AEC collection that perhaps you might have or are interested in. For my background, I have an M.Arch and worked 17 years at Autodesk in a technical role with them before coming here to Topcon. And I'm a Revit certified professional in all that. And hopefully I'll, teach a class or you'll see me in the future here. Where we're going with this is 3ds Max today. Diana and team asked me to pick out some software that might not be commonly used in your AEC collection. And to consider it, a lot of people are drawn to AutoCAD and Revit, of course, Navisworks, and that sort of thing. I think on the construction part of the series, one of my colleagues did a presentation on Navisworks for that, and that'd be a good one too. I thought 3ds Max would be a good one because of its ability to make renderings that you might have more flexibility than in a Revit render. And then it also does 3D walkthrough. So if we have time, I'll be getting to that. With regard to that, I thought I'd show you a little bit of the finished product that can come out of 3ds Max. And this data set that I'm using, at least part of my presentation today, is the Autobahn Education Center in Ohio, as an Autobahn Society. And you can see here the renderings that are done. This is one from an overall view. I doubt I'll get to what they call civil view, which can animate the cars through it. And if I have some time, I'll show you how to make these the placement of silhouette figures and such. I at least want to be able to show you how we can do renderings and animation as a part of this. So with that, let me go over and show you a little bit of Max here before I bring in Revit into the mix of this. Here's one of the setups here. It looks different if you're a Revit user, an AutoCAD user. You're going to have to get used to it because the menus are different and the way that they operate is different. Right now, by default, it brings it up in perspective, like a quad, 4 different views, top, left, front, and the like. But you can get into the configuration and choose a different layout if you so desire. Here's a few predefined ones here. And if I decide that I want, for example, right here is the front view, which relates to this one. All I have to do is click in here and say, I'd like to look at it from the back, and then you hit apply, and now you're looking at it from the back there. So you can set these up to be different configurations if you want to, and you'll see me doing that from time to time. The other thing that I can do is I can say, for now, let's maximize the viewport here, and then work with a little bit, and then later restore it, and it goes back to this kind of a view if I want. So just wanted to give you a little bit of a sense for that. Now, one of the things that that we can do in 3ds Max, we can make cameras, we can drop in lights, and we can draw geometry in here. So I used to think that maybe a 3-day class would be a good one to learn how to make geometry and stuff. I started teaching a 1-day class on Revit users to 3ds Max, where we're not really making quite as much in the way of geometry like this, because we create the geometry over in Revit, where the construction documents have to be done anyway. The teapot's kind of interesting. I'm not sure what that came from in the background here. I remember it back when I was at Autodesk, when it was 3D Studio, and the teapot was kind of the iconic thing here with it. Individuals, I guess, just to be able to test your scene or the like. So anyway, you can create geometry there if you so desire. And I'm just going to go ahead and reset the screen because I'm not going to concentrate on this part, that aspect of it. What I wanted to concentrate on is over on the Revit side of things, moving into Max. So here's an RVT file if you're a Revit user. And we could do this same presentation with AutoCAD architecture, for example, if that's your thing, or AutoCAD MEP. And over here, there's the RVT itself, but I might point this out while I'm here, is that you can also save this in a couple different formats that Max can use. One is to create a DWG, and of course you'd want to create a 3-dimensional DWG out of that, and not one of your views that does 2D. And some people that use that route where they go to DWG and then over said that some of the smoothness, like on a handrail, for example, is nicer, smoother, right? FBX is another one. I'm going to leave you to research some of that on your own because there's upsides and downsides of linking directly into the RVT or exporting out an FBX and then handing it over in here. So here's one of my models. This is the community center arch here, and I'm just going to link another one so you can see what it looks like over here on the Revit side of the house here. This one has the whole front of the building on it here, but I might also point out that over here on the back side is trees, right? And these trees are RPC, as in rich photographic content, and they will be mysteriously gone during this process and not coming over into the 3ds Max side of the house. So I'll show you what to do with that sort of thing. And let's see, no, don't save changes. Okay, so here we are back on this side. So let's go ahead and try a link one of the two. So here's where I have a chance to link any one of these three, and I'll show you things like importing and merging, what that's about. With that, I think I'll go over here to the import where I had that same one I was in a moment ago. Here it is, and go directly to the RVT and open that up. This will flash and then it'll disappear and it'll come back to us in a few moments after having a little spin of the donut here. One of the things that it is going to bring up is all of the views that are in the Revit RVT. Okay, so say for example, go with this one. Now, sometimes what I'll do is I will say, while I'm still in Revit, I'll make a copy of it and I'll nuke a bunch of the cameras so that not so many views come in. I think this model originally had about 128 of those, so you probably just want to clean those out in a copy on the Revit side before you bring them in as one choice. FBX, one of the things about that is that it tells you which view do you want to select, which is probably an ortho view, or I don't know, it can be a perspective, and then just brings in the one camera as a part of that process. The other thing that I will show you during this process, we have a chance to combine together elements. So for example, by default, it was combining by material is what I had it do when I hit OK here. So an advantage there, two different advantages when you combine like that, as opposed to one of the other choices, don't combine at all. You can do it by material, you can do it by category, for example. And then, here, right in this area, you can see I combined by Revit material here. And so this way, if I decide that I want to change something, like the brick on the front of this building, for example, to something else, it'll change all the brick without having to go around from wall to wall to wall around the outside edge for that. Okay, with that. So let's do yet another one here. You can see, actually, maybe I should just point out just some of this stuff. All these colors out here, those are our lights, right? Plus some of these are cameras in here that you're seeing. In a longer presentation or a class, I would show you how we can adapt the lights on these to find the right IES file and turn on the lights in there. Let me go ahead and link another one here because this will take a minute too. I promise not to do too many of these because of the time, how long it takes for an import to happen. But once again, it's theoretically just once here. Here's that landscape that was around the outside edge. Hopefully my little donut will come back. There we go. And I'll go ahead and combine this one by material as well in case I decide that I want to change the grass to something else. So, and then attach that file as well, combine my material. So that donut will start spinning. Now, if you recall back in the Revit, there was these rich photographic content, which might be people, might be shrubs, things like that. You can see down here, if I take it, maybe I'll go to enlarge that a bit, maximize the view there. And you can see they're gone, right? But the geometry read in nicely here. with that too. One other thing too, as I maybe jump around to a few different views here, like if I go to camera, let's just go to this one, for example, in the hallway. Sometimes the normals get flipped with an RVT to where they have the normal on the wrong side here. And I've read that FBX can do a better job with handling the normals on that. So let me go back to the orthographic view. And of course that like zooms me in really close, okay, to the target. So anyway, here's my building over here now. With regard to those trees, we can, I did want to let you know, when changes happen, I mean, as you would expect with a link here, like say this mechanical unit moved around or something like that, that rooftop unit there. Next time I open the file, it will show up with the new changes that were in there if you're actually using your design file to get that done. But if you needed to, you can come back right in the middle of a project if it's getting replaced under the hood. You can go to Manage Links, and you'll see the links right here. There'll be a subtle little red indicator at the corner to let you know that it's changed, and then you hit Reload. I won't take the time to make changes in Revit, but you can do that. Okay, so what about the entourage here? How do we work with that? Well, since there are rich photographic content, cars, people, trees, that sort of thing that you might be using in Revit, but aren't going to work so hot over here in Max. We have our own and trees that we would be dropping in. So in this case, I'm going to do a merge. We were doing links before, but I'll merge or import, or either one of these could work. And I'll go to the entourage, and I have a hemlock that I wanted to put in. You can see a little, maybe I can zoom in a little closer here for you if you can see that. That's what the tree is looking like. And I'll say open it, and there's the tree, and click OK. And it comes up with a name over here that I could change if I wanted to. And I'll go ahead and drop it in right there. So there's my new tree. Okay, and I'll go ahead and move that over onto where I'd like it next to the building. So say move that, and let's see if I can move it over here, move it up here. They got these gizmos that work for this sort of thing. And I'll just orbit around a little bit, maybe move it out away from the building just a little, something like that. And this camera right here is the southeast perspective. Let me just shift over to that one then. Remember, once again, we got all the same views, 3D views out of Revit that came in, and there's my tree. So something like this with this hemlock that I just dropped in is you can download those. This one came out of Seek some time ago, seek.autodesk.com. But here, let me grab my web browser and just bring it over onto this one. These days, that content's moved over to bimobject.com, and they got a lot of brand X up there as well, besides Revit. Besides Autodesk stuff, they have some others up there. I just wanted to see. Like this might be, for a Revit user, might be the place where we go to grab windows and lights and things like that. This is one of my favorite sites, and if I type in trees, for example, bunches of trees, and I'll just pick, oh, here's an orange tree, for example. Maybe I should just, I mean, lots of trees, right? So pick on that one and drill in a little bit, and it looks like this. And if I go to downloads, bunches of different format, including RFA, but here's the 3DS, and that's the old format of it. And here's the Max, which is another one that you can download. So I just wanted to be aware of that, on where you come up with those. If you want to, they come with maps for this, so it doesn't just look like a bare tree. If you want to take a look at the assets that come with that, if you go to, let's see, so reference, here we go, asset tracking. you can see, oh, here, actually, I'm in the view asset tracking. Let's get the tree, I think right there, and I'll go to asset tracking on that. Reference asset tracking. There we go. Yeah. Anyway, the two materials that are associated with that, the maps would be there. I'm not going to take too much time to look for it. Maybe I just needed to drag that out a little bit. All right, let's work with the lights and materials a little bit for effects here once. So let me reset out of this one and set myself back here again and open up another file. I'm going to open up the one that Autobahn Education Center that we were looking at a little bit earlier here once, and open that one up and adopt the units. There we go. And give it a moment here. You will find that that 3ds Max is more compute intensive with regard to this. So we do have some ways to get a little more performance. You know, like for example here, I'm just going to maximize this one. You can see here that right now I don't have an environment in the background. There is transparency on the glass here and a little bit of materials happening. If right now I'm in standard, you can go with performance, you can adjust the lights, you can adjust the materials, tell it with and without maps in order to speed things up. If I go to high quality here, you'll see that if I don't move my cursor around, the glass is getting less and less grainy as and the shadows are being cast through onto the light fixture. You can see through the window there. Additionally, when you're trying to get a better sense, like how is this going to render? Maybe you have opportunity for that. Here's another one that's even more compute intensive, which is Arnold, using Arnold with active shade with this. And I leave this on, I can close it, but it's trying to deal with material maps. I haven't mapped out yet where they exist, so it's doing an approximation to make life easy on me here. You can see here, if I don't move my cursor around, and you see how it's making pass after pass, and you'll see it in kind of little squares showing up across the bottom and the sides of my screen as it makes its way around. The idea behind this is you get a better sense for what the real rendering is going to look like. There's now an environment with a little bit of cloud and whatever in the background, more shadows. Now we're seeing the brick off to the right side of the entryway there as well. And so I get a better sense for what it would look like if I were to do a rendering on that. Now, if something moves, by the way, I can edit right in this, but then it starts working again with the active shade once again. So usually what I might do when I'm normally just working, I'll have the higher performance one, like just working in a standard view in order to get that done. Now, if you do decide that you would like to get a sense for where you're at with the rendering, like say this is the view that I wanted to make a rendering out of, I'm going to go over here to the render setup here once, and the Arnold renderer would be probably the best rendering with this. And then you can pick a resolution. You know, for a quickie, they have some predefined ones down here, 800 by 600, when you're trying to decide what you'd like to render and what view you'd like. Also, in terms of something that's a little different, you see where my little hand is? You can scroll over here to the side if you want, but if there's an open area, you can push it up and down. If you do have some flipping of normals, you can force two-sided on some of these, but it'll impact your performance here. And then if you know, if you wanted to, you can render here. The other places, if you got it set up the way you want, you can hit the render over here. I'll clear this, close this. And so this is kind of like the high resolution or high quality together with Arnold. It's making the same kind of passes there, but truer aspect of what it's going to look like when we go to do the actual rendering in the end. So I'll go ahead and I can cancel out of that at any time. I don't have to let it finish rendering. I did want to show you a couple other stylistic ways that we can look at this with regard to the way that we work on a project. For example, right now we're seeing it trying to get as photorealistic as possible. These kind of photorealism that we're seeing here is one aspect. Another aspect is the way that we might do an animation like this in the end. And this is that same, I have it positioned currently right in the doorway where the camera is looking at it right there. But you can put together animations and have a camera follow along a path and then go ahead and do the rendering and piece them together. And if I have time, I'll be doing that closer to the end of the presentation here. Also, we can animate objects within it, such as the water rippling like this and the flag up above blowing in the breeze there. Okay, so there's that. If you're trying to work with stylistic, it's kind of funny, I don't have clay in here in default. Okay, here we go. Yep, this is what I was after. We can go with hidden line, for example. I'll show you a few of these anyway. Have you ever had one of those kind of a presentations where you're trying to talk to the customer or the owner, your client, and they're all hung up on this red, right? And you've already had the conversation with them and said, you know, let's forget about the red. Okay, we're going to go with blue, just like you want, but then they can't get off of it, or you know, the brick is brown and they, you know, they really wanted red brick, and so you can go to clay, so that we're just talking about geometry down here as you're working through that. There's other stylized ways to work with it. Here's graphite, for example. And this can be an ortho view too. It doesn't have to be, you know, like if I go, let's go to orthographic, and then I'll move myself back here a little bit. And there it is. You know, so it actually looks like this when you're working in an orth with the stylized views. It's kind of a background, and then if you want to, you can render like that as well. Let's try a different one here in the same view. Stylized. I like colored pencil a lot. Kind of nice, huh? Yep, like that. And there's a few others in here. Ink, color ink, acrylic, looks like this. Stylized. Pastel is kind of nice. I like that one. Puts kind of like it's on paper that has a little bit of ripple to it, right? A little bit tooth to the paper. And maybe I'll just show you a tech here before we go back to default shading. There's tech. Anyway, there's different ways you can stylize it with a click of a button if you wanted to. There's back to default again on what we were using before. All right, let me put myself back to the camera view that's at the doorway there. Also, you know, if things are kind of dark, of course, this would make more sense during the rendering process, because this is just a standard view. It's not a full. Under the rendering tab, we can get at environment and exposure control here, where we can set up the levels of light here and the exposure value if it's a little too dark for that. And then depending on how you have your settings here with highlights and midtones and such, there's just all sorts of control in here. You can do a quick little clear. Let me clear that, close this one. Clear, close. You can do a quick little rendering here in this view, so you can get a better sense for it without taking the time, as you're adjusting it, without taking the time to bounce back out, adjust the lights, hit a render, come back in, over and over again with that. Okay. So anyway, that's another one I thought I'd share with you here. Additionally, here we are back here. we had just finished up the linking of Revit in the design model, the place where you actually have to do your construction documents anyway. And then we looked at a couple of different stylistic displays that we can use. And now I wanted to deal a little bit with working with cameras here. So let's get a sense for that. Let me go back to the 3ds Max here. Okay, so let me do a restore here once. Okay, right here is the top view that we're looking at. You saw that I was able to orbit when I was in an orthogonal view. If I want to, I can select the camera and move it around in the same way that I was moving the tree around earlier off the gizmos here. You can see it updating into the other window down below. So that's one of the ways that we approach it with moving cameras around. Just because that's where the camera was when it came out of Revit doesn't necessarily mean we have to leave it there. I'll be showing you later how we can create our own cameras as well over here. So with that, let me go ahead and close out of this one. And I'd like to show you creating a walkthrough animation. Let's do that next. Okay, let me go and open up a different file here once I'm jumping around from dataset to dataset here. Let me go with this one. It's a retail building out on a hillside. And open that one up and adopt the settings here. Okay, now in this view here, I'll go ahead and expand this one out here a little bit. You can see that there's a camera set up here with the target on it. And then there's also another one set up with the target there on it. Okay, so just to orient you a bit. Now, currently, I have no environment set for the background as far as, few clouds, lots of clouds, that kind of thing for that. So there's another approach that I can take, which is to drop in basically a huge dome around the outside of this. And in this case, I'll be doing a merge to get that done. And I'll take a dome that looks like this. Basically, it puts a grass plane underneath it, but well, it already has a grass plane under it, but it will put a hemisphere and has an image map to the side of it. So like right now, I don't see any clouds back there. I'm going to go ahead and merge that one into my scene, the sky and ground dome, and say okay. Now suddenly you can see the clouds from that in the background there, and it actually looks like this. You can see around the outside edge, it's just encompassing the whole, the whole thing over the top of it, kind of like that, right? Okay. Anyway, that's another approach that you can take as well. I'd like to do one other thing here, not just create a camera, but define a path through here that the camera can follow along and come up the hill and then around the outside of the building. So to save time here, instead of actually drawing things like arcs and lines, and the egg one is actually kind of a nice one for this, because with the egg, you just pick the center and then you say attach to that, and it'll kind of, instead of going in a circle, it'll create a predefined path for you that can be super helpful. So let's go ahead and merge that one in as well here. I'm going to go to File. I've made one already here, so go to Merge. And here's the animation path, and open that one up. And you'll see it form right over in this area here. It's kind of subtle, but, and then click OK. There it is right there, animation path. Okay, right there. Okay, so now that said, let's get ready right now. A lot of selectable stuff. I might want to take this group right here a group and freeze it, freeze that selection. You'll see the grass turns to kind of a grayish, so that I'm not selecting things that I don't want to select. And now you can see the path more readily here through this part of it as well. Okay, so let me expand this one out here a little bit so you can see a little bit better as I create. Now, I said I wanted to make a camera. We can make several different kinds. A free camera, just put it out there and make it shine wherever you want. The target is the controllable one I'm looking for. So I'm going to go with a target. I'll just initially place it out here and then drag it. You can see I'm dragging the camera. This is pretty similar to Revit if you're a Revit user. I want it to look at the center of the building. So I set the target there, and I can rename these. You can see it over here in the name tree. I'm going to call this one walk through cam, something like that. And then it renames it over there, and I can pick it from a list, but I can also pick it here, the walkthrough cam, and jump myself over to it. Right now it's probably looking at dirt because it's down the hill from that. Okay, so with that then, I want the camera to follow along on the path here. So I can attach they call it a constraint, create a constraint between the camera and the path so that it has to stay on the path. But an approach that we might use is a helper, a dummy like what we're seeing here. And the dummy actually, think of it as a little cart that you're going to place the camera on, and then I'll link the two together. And the little cart that I make will get linked over here to the path, and then as it goes along, the camera can pivot on top while the cart makes its way around the path. Okay, so that's where I'm going with it. It's kind of a 2 or 3 step process here, but I'm going to create that dummy, and let's see, where do I want to put it here? So I'll go from here to there, maybe that big. Okay, so there's the dummy, and I can rename that one as well. Now, right now, they're 2 separate objects, but they're not linked together. So I'm going to use the select and link and go from there to there. Do you see my little stretch? And then I say I want to link these 2 together. Now, what that does is, if I say back here again, the dummy, and I want to move the dummy. Okay, they're moving together as a unit, all right? Okay, so now I got that much done. Next, what I want to do is constrain it to the path. I'm going to constrain the dummy right here, which is linked to the walkthrough camera to the path. Okay, so I go to animation and constraints, and a bunch of different ways I can constrain it. A path constraint is what I'm looking for here. And then it says, well, where do you want the path to be? And then I'm going to come over here. This is part of why I froze the rest of this, so I don't accidentally have it follow along on a part of the road. And I'll link it somewhere onto that, and it jumps over. Okay, so ta-da! All right, now what it's doing at the moment is I just hit the play down here at the bottom, and you can see it's playing. This one also has an animation. We'll be getting to that one soon, a flyover. It's following its own. And this one, as it goes around the corner, then tilts like that. I don't have to do anything. And then at any point, I can just hit stop or send it back to its beginning like that. Okay, so that's how we get that much of it going. And if I go to restore view, and maybe I'll set this one here to, oops, that's wrong. There we go. There we go. Camera, walk through cam. And then maybe I will unfreeze this, so unfreeze all, so we get our grass back and such like that. And my screen's kind of weird now. Okay, there we go. Good. So with that, then, if I hit play, You can see the camera. This is the active view, so this one's not updating at the moment, but we already saw it's following along the path. And when it gets here, those kind of, some of these yellow lines you're seeing are actually the path, because I unfroze everything here. It's following along to pivot itself back and forth to match up with the target. Okay, so that's the beginning of how we would, well, the beginning, or one of the steps that we would do in order to get to animation nirvana. All right, so let's do another one here, and I'll show you how how to make the animation and save it, and then export it basically as a movie file or an AVI file or something like that. So let me reset out of this one, and I'll open up basically the same file here once and reset. Let me go to open, and this time let's go with the start here and click open and adopt the file units. Okay, so now here's the same one that we had before here once. You can see with that setup. The one that I'm going to be concentrating on this time is this guy right out here. Instead of the walking camera, we'll use the camera flyover view. So I clicked inside this. By the way, it's really subtle, but if you look a little closer, you'll see that it puts kind of a golden frame around the outside edge to let you know that it's the active view that you're caring about at the moment in time. A couple of setup things we would want to do. One is, how do we want the timeline to be down here? So by default it's SMPTE. I set mine to frames here. And then this way I can count out the frames, like I'm up to 600 at the moment. And I could say, you know, actually, let's make that 580 frames here. And you can see that it's rescaling the timeline here to match that. So that was one of the things I needed to do. Also, when it plays it, do you want to go at a single speed or half speed or double speed? Do you want it to loop? Things like that. And you say, okay, so that was one setup thing that I needed to do. In terms of rendering setup, since we are talking about an animation here, I can choose which kind of renderer I would like to work with. Now we saw the Arnold Render earlier, which is going to give really terrific quality for us, but it also takes time, right? So I'm going to use the Art Render, which is going to be faster, but it'll still take some time, and we can do some setup under that too. I just have it set for draft right now, so it's going to be kind of grainy, but that is how you normally would work, is you use draft, get things done as fast as possible, tweak the lighting and stuff, and then when you're ready for the real thing, you pump it up higher for that. Right now I have a range set, and I'm going to say I want to start at, instead of 0, I'll go with like frame 220. I want to start out here and come up here to say 400 for that. So I'm just going to have it do, we don't have time to do a lot of this, but just do this kind of middle segment when it's a little closer to the building there. And then area to render is the view, and at the moment that happens to be the camera flyover with that. And then how big do you want it to be? I'm set for 500 by, that's not too bad for that. Okay, and then am I missing anything else here? Okay, so with that then, when you're doing the output, where do you want to, what do you want to save it as, and where do you want it to go? So for example, I'm going to put my render output over here, and I'll make a new folder called, let's see, so retail building, something like that, retail building, get into that. So I'm going to put them in here. Now, there's a bunch of different kind of formats that I could work with. And a couple of them are, I could go directly to an AVI or to a movie, for example. But the approach I'm going to take is to go to ping files. So every single frame is going to be a ping or a JPEG as it's being created from this. So I'm going to call this one, retail. Retail ping, right? The advantage there is if there's a hiccup or something along the way and a couple of the frames get messed up, you can actually just get into the frames and say, you know what, I'm just kidding, don't want that one. And then this way you can seam it back together again or just recreate frame number 401 if you needed to. And I'm going to hit save on that. And then I'll hit, let's see, I think I'll just go ahead and hit render then. I think I got it. Render. And let me clear off all this so you can see. Now it's going to run for a while, but I'm going to go ahead and close it out in just a minute. It says time remaining 9 minutes. Usually what I will do is instead of telling it to make every single frame, at this point, back in that other dialogue, I would have perhaps set it for every third frame so that I can tell whether or not it's coming together the way I want. Depending on how much time I have, I could set it for 22 frames if I felt like it and have it be kind of jumpy, right? But as it's creating this, I'll let it create just a couple more here. It looks like we got 5. It's working on number 5 here, and once we get 5 of those, I'll just cancel out of this and show you what we got. Okay, so I'll cancel and hit close on that one, and then I'll close out of this one. And let's take a look and see what we got here. That's retail building. You can see here it's been building frame after frame of pings. Now, it numbers them as we go. I have it jumping. Looks like I have it jumping every 4th frame for that. And so you make a whole series of those, right? And then after you get that part of it set up, we can do this next. Let's go to do a preview and create a preview animation out of this. And it's just a grainy one that's running right now, but it gives us kind of a sense of how the thing is coming together with that. And now we just need to, after creating the frames, we have one more step yet to go, and that is to save it into an AVI or something like that. Now, of course, this is just a few frames that we've developed here. So with that, I'm going to assemble that final animation here, and I'll do that with the RAM player here to get this done. Now I'm going to show you like one aspect of this. You can see up here, I'm just going to be opening channel A here once and then saving it. But the other way that we use this is if you're making changes, say to a bump map, for example, and you're trying to make the water ripple, you can open up 2 different runs, and then it creates kind of a stripe down the middle here that you can slide to the left and to the right and compare changes, because, sometimes the changes that you're making are just super subtle and you can barely tell the difference between the shadows of this and the ripple of that sort of a thing. And so this way, as you're sliding it back and forth, you can say, that didn't work out so hot, or well, that's going exactly where I want it to. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open up. I did open up channel A and go to that retail building and pick the first in the image here, image series that I have. And then down here is kind of the key is to tell them to sequence it, right? Sequence those together, and then click open. And it says, well, where do you want the target path? If you wanted to go someplace else, you can do that as well. And then click OK. And then, what do you want the resolution to be? And I'll say fine. And then I click OK. Now, 1 through 5. This is 5 frames, right? Okay, all right. If that went by a little too fast, let me do this again here. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, there we go. There's the 5 frames. Now, the reason it's moving as slow as it is for me here, if I just expand this out, I have it set down to as slow as it can go. Because if I was going, at maybe a more normal, like something that doesn't trick the eye, 15 frames a second or something that does trick the eye into seamlessness. That way, it'd be like disappear, disappear, disappear. So anyway, we've created that much of it. Now, I did, just using the Arnold render, I did make another one that is the same, but a few more frames. And, it's still kind of grainy like this. I've made it as an AVI using the art render and draft mode. So it's kind of a, but this guy right here on my computer took, I think it just even to do that took 1 hour and 10 minutes or something like that. To get that part, that much of it done. Ultimately though, you get to the point where you're doing this, right? Hopefully we all get to that kind of point with the entourage and really tweaking an environment. Okay, so it's about 8 till. Let me show you one other aspect of this, if you'll bear with me on this. In terms of, I'm not going to get to civil view cars, but in there you use, they have a library of cars that actually render out kind of like this. If you zoom in really close, you can see your face. No, you can't see your face in the reflection. All right, now I'm pulling your leg. But I wanted to do the object painting. Now, in this case, we just go around and we place a few people here, silhouette people, if that's what you want. For this, or animated people if you want to go that direction. But imagine a beach scene or a mall where you have a lot of people, the town square, that kind of thing, where you have tons and tons of these you need to drop in. They have a tool in here for you to use to help you get that done. So let me go ahead and reset out of this one once. To paint this, basically, object painting. So I'll open up, let's see, is it 5B, I believe, 5B, open this one up and grab those settings. So here's a bunch of the same, here's woman number 3, some of the same little silhouette people here that I might or might not want to work with when I do some painting. So with that, you can see here, it says object paint, and then there's populate, for example, which is a cool one. I just use this tool to drop this down so I can see the object paint a little bit better here. Okay, so I'm going to set this up a little bit first on how I'd like to work with it. For starters, let's do this. Let's edit the object list here. Right now I don't have anything to paint with, so I'm just going to create a crossing window around all of them, and then go ahead and click on add selected here. So I've added them all in, or if there's one that I didn't want to work with, maybe one of these looks like they're sitting down, for example, or something. I don't have to paint with all of them there. Secondly, when I paint, how do I want to paint? Right now it's set for whatever was last in the list, which is woman 03. And I'm going to go with all randomly. So it's just going to make its way up and down through this list randomly, so that there's less chance of a pattern happening, right, that somebody might notice. Also, what would I like to paint on? And I'm going to say on the scene, which will work best for me here. But you can see here that video that's coming up. If you want to, on a hillside, for example, it'd probably be better to use selected objects and then paint on a hillside for that. But it'll go up and down the hill. But I'm going to say paint on the scene, so we'll just put them all on the same level here. And then the spacing, how close do you want them together? They're 4 units apart. That's pretty close together here. I'm going to say be 200 units apart for that. Now, this will maintain social distancing, right? Whatever is appropriate to that. And you got to know where the normals are for these to know whether you need to flip one of these up or not. And that would be 90 on the Z for these guys right here to flip them up. Okay, so from here to here, I'm going to select all of them, and then I think I'm ready for this. Paint with selected objects. And then I left click. Okay, let me move back here a little bit. Boom. Right? It's just I left click and hold, and I'm just moving my cursor around here like that. And then, if I'm feeling good about that, I can go ahead and finish, but actually you can change the spacing on these. It's like a scatter effect here. Actually, if I just hover over this for a second, you'll see kind of a scatter effect to move things out. So I'm going to give it a little bit of extra room here so that it doesn't look like they're standing in a line, queuing up, so to speak. So with that, now if I'm painting, wherever my cursor is, it's depending on the values that I put up here, it's dropping them off to the side a bit. So if I'm done, I'm just going to right click my cursor to get back out of that. You can see that if you run into any that are lazy, this person has fallen over, okay? And actually, I probably would just take that particular one out of the mix, but this was intentional, so you can see that any that are messed up or you didn't like the way it was, maybe it's a laying down one, or maybe some of these are too close together or something. You can delete those out of the list as well. So I am running out of time. With that, the object painting that we just did, I just in closing here, and perhaps Diana will let me know whether she wants me to field any questions. But 3ds Max, just wanted you to check it out. If you got the AEC collection or you're thinking about the AEC collection, maybe it looks a bit foreign to an AutoCAD or a Revit user, but super powerful to be able to understand, explore, and share your designs. With that, I might hand it back over to Diana.
Thank you very much, Curt. At this time, we don't have any questions, but if anyone does have a question, please feel free to type that in. Like I said, if we can't get to your questions today, we will follow up and reach out to you. This webinar today was recorded, so if you would like to rewatch or if you would like to share with any of your colleagues, please reference our website, topconsolutions.com, as well as our YouTube channel. So if you remember, please subscribe and turn on those notifications so you know when it's posted. Okay, so we had no incoming questions, Curt. With that being said, thank you so much for the presentation this morning, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Thank you.